everyone has been here since the afternoon and everyone is excited for the game. So I'm Shivay. I'm a contributor and maintainer at SODA Foundation. So I'll be also explaining one of the open source projects. So SODA Foundation is under the Linux Foundation, like the CNCF. So I'll be also sharing about the project, the Linux Foundation project that is powering the multi-cloud architecture. And yeah, I mean, it's been a crazy day. I've already given 3 talks today, so this is my 4th. So thank you so much for bearing with me. Anyways, so I'll just first go over some of the most popular deployment models for cloud. So we know about private cloud and public cloud. Examples being for private cloud, running in a company where you don't want to share your data, so private clusters where you're hosting everything for a company. Then you have public clouds, very popular examples like GCP, AWS, which are shared providers. And then, of course, there are some examples which use hybrid cloud, which basically is some architectures might use both private cloud and public cloud in some companies. And very similar to the hybrid cloud is the multi-cloud. So multi-cloud is the usage of probably 2 or 3 or even more cloud service providers, where you're kind of picking and choosing between services which might serve the best for your use case. And again, it will depend from company to company and whatever they are building, right? So it kind of depends on each and every company's internal infrastructure and the architecture of their applications and products. So there are a lot of inherent benefits that we basically get by using multi-cloud, and some of them include things such as vendor lock-in. So one of the biggest issues that we have if you're just sticking to one cloud provider is the fact that you kind of get into this vendor lock-in. That means that the vendor wants you to stick to their platform itself permanently, right? So it becomes very difficult to migrate from one cloud provider to another cloud provider. And in order to overcome those kind of scenarios, that's where multi-cloud really shines, because you can pick and choose which particular services you want from which particular cloud provider. And that can help you with the cost. And in case, let's say, one of the cloud providers goes down, and we actually see that happening a lot of times. So that actually helps you to go against unplanned downtime, right? Because that gives you better architecture, and it gives you better controllability in terms of the, in case if there is any lockdowns or some outages happen in one particular cloud provider. So if you're adopting to a multi-cloud, you're getting all these different benefits. So the biggest one is the return on investment in terms of the cost, because you're picking and choosing the services that work out best for you. So you're able to manage your cost very well. And then, of course, you get a reliable architecture, as we have already mentioned some of the benefits. And of course, the biggest one is the disaster recovery as well. So now we'll come on to the most important part and how this talk is related to cloud native data management day, right? So since you're talking about data management and on cloud, so it's important to understand that how data migration from one cloud to another cloud works. And because normally we associate data with databases, right? And of course, that's if you're using a monolithic architecture and you're using an application. But in case you are on a cloud infrastructure, you also need to understand that how you can migrate your data from one cloud to another. So data mobility basically talks about that, how you can manage your data and send it from on-prem to cloud, or from cloud to on-prem, or from cloud to cloud. So all those different processes are what comes under this entire umbrella of data mobility. And one of the biggest reasons why we need data mobility in the first place is, again, because a lot of companies today, a lot of organizations are moving from on-prem storage to a permanently cloud-based storage. And some of them might be kind of having some of their storage on-prem, and some of them might be having them on cloud. So all that data migration and the IT services that are associated with it comes with the data mobility. And we'll be taking a look at some of the examples and what are some of the challenges that come with this data mobility. As I previously mentioned, one of the biggest ones is the vendor lock-in. So you do not get a ready-made API from, let's say, AWS S3 to be able to migrate all of your storage buckets to, let's say, GCP storage buckets. So if you were to do that manually, you'll have to first take a dump of your entire S3 storage and then upload it back to your GCP storage, right? So you don't have ready-made APIs that can help you to do that. And apart from that, there are some other challenges as well, including data recovery, data backups, right, that you need to take from time to time. So all of those, if you were to set them manually, it will take a lot of time and effort to be able to do that. and also in terms of the resources. And if we take a look at some of the common use cases where data mobility is really important. So one of the biggest ones is in machine learning. So a lot of times when you're dealing with machine learning, you're dealing with a lot of data sets. So you need to train your machine learning model. You need new data that gets updated regularly. And as you are moving your machine learning model into production, you're getting more input data that you need to continuously train your machine learning model. And you can take a look at some of the other examples. I'll not take a lot of time to discuss those, but over here I've just taken some of the examples. So I already spoke about uploading your data sets to the public clouds, storing them on the storage buckets to be able to use by your machine learning models. Then we have again, being able to transfer your data from your local on-prem storage to your public cloud and then download it again. So these are some of the examples of how data mobility comes into the picture, especially in the context of cloud computing. And then, of course, the biggest one is migration of your data, right? Sometimes it might happen that you might not be satisfied with one of the cloud providers, like let's say AWS, due to costs or due to various reasons, and you want to migrate your data from one cloud to another. So that's where basically I'd like to introduce the SODA Strato project. So as I mentioned, that SODA Foundation is, it comes under the Linux Foundation, and it has a number of different projects that are primarily focused on helping with data and data management on cloud, right? And one of the projects that I'm really excited to present is the SODA Strato. So this is a multi-cloud data management project, and I'll be also showing you a video of how easy it is to actually set it up and migrate and manage your data from multiple clouds. And again, it's completely open source. So if you want to contribute to it as well, you can visit the SODA Foundation GitHub and you can contribute to the multi-cloud project. So just to kind of understand what the multi-cloud project is all about, so I'll move into the architecture as well in a bit, but it primarily allows you to kind of just use a plug and play option where you can just like let's say define your access keys for multiple cloud providers and then just embed them in this SODA Strato project. So it provides you a web-based UI, and you can very easily just set up your cloud backends, and it supports all the major clouds like IBM, Google, GCP, Azure, AWS, Huawei Cloud, and you can just mention the endpoints and the secrets, and you'll be able to connect these backends to the SODA Foundation project, to the Strato project. And then it provides you REST APIs through which you're able to do things such as data migration, data backup, and mobility of the data, right? So this is how the architecture kind of looks like. So over here you can see that we have the major database and all the backend adapters are there, including all the major services, including AWS S3, GCP bucket storage, and it provides you a unified API through which you're able to manage the migration and the backup and rollbacks of your data all through the UI that is provided by the Strato project. And this is how internally the data flow engine kind of looks like. So in terms of like batching of your data, that's how you can kind of, and again, I'll not waste a lot of time today on this, but if you want to get in touch with me, we can discuss how internally the data logic and the data flow kind of looks like. But I'll move on to the demo. So if you can please, you can present the video. So this is currently being used by a lot of companies as well. Huawei, it's already in production. So
it's certified by CNCF?
Yes, not the CNCF, it's under the Linux Foundation. Yes, yeah. So it's part of the SODA Foundation, and SODA Foundation is under the Linux Foundation. Yeah, so over here, like you can start playing the video. So this is the actual UI. So if you were running this locally, this is how it would look like. You'll just sign in, and then you can go ahead and register a backend. So the first example that we are doing is we are registering a backend for GCP and actually AWS. And once you register this particular backend, then we'll register the next backend where we are showing an example for GCP. So we'll register a new backend. So the first one was AWS. Now we are registering one for GCP. So the example that we are going to be showcasing in this particular video is how you can transfer your or migrate your data from, let's say, AWS buckets to a GCP storage bucket. So here I've registered these two buckets. Now, if I go to our dashboard, and we're just showing some other examples as well, like including Azure. So you can probably skip a few seconds if that's possible. You can skip a few seconds. Yeah, a bit more. You can go to the place where we are showing the dashboard. Yeah. So here, what we are doing is that now we are just creating the buckets, right? So once you have registered these backends, like these cloud backends to this UI, you'll be able to manage and see all of your buckets that are there in these cloud providers, and those will be visible over here and manageable through this UI platform, this SODA Strato UI. And then what we're showcasing in this demo is how you migrate your storage buckets from one cloud to another. So over here we are showing an example for a AWS bucket that we are going to be migrating to GCP and to Huawei Cloud. So here you can see that we have just created a new bucket on demo AWS, and you could see that being presented in the actual AWS cluster as well. So if you're creating it over here, it will automatically get created because we have authenticated our backend, like that particular cloud backend, with this UI. You can probably skip a bit as well if you want. Yeah, so you can do it a bit more. So here we're just showing how you can set up your the buckets in each and every cloud provider, the most common examples. And yeah, you can just scroll a bit more in the video, probably halfway. Yeah, a bit more. Now here is this the case where now we are actually uploading the data from one cloud provider to another, and we are transferring it through this example. And you'll see that getting reflected very quickly in their respective clouds. So you can see that this one just got uploaded as we used the that particular dashboard, the resource manager dashboard, to upload the flow. And here we are showing the data flow for the migrations, for the migration to take place. So we'll define the path where the bucket is situated, and we'll select which particular bucket from a specific cloud provider, and we'll let you know the resultant bucket where you want to actually migrate your data to. So that's a quick demonstration for just the data migration as well. But of course, there are a lot of other extension or a lot of other capabilities that come with this, including data backup and data storage as well. So I mean, that's a very quick demo. You can go back to the slides. Perfect. Yeah, you can head to the next slide. Yeah, next slide. Yeah. So if all of you are also looking to contribute to this particular project, you can contribute to the GitHub SODA Foundation Multicloud, and you can visit this project. And in case you are willing to know more about the SODA Foundation itself, you can also join the Slack. Again, as I mentioned, that it comes primarily under the Linux Foundation, and it is a really great way for managing your cloud native data management. That's what all of us are over here for. So I look forward to seeing contributions from all of you if you're interested from this project. But with that, I'll conclude my talk. Thank you so much, and I'd love to answer any questions. Yeah.
So thank you very much for the presentation. Very interesting. If I understood well, so you have S3 to S3 data migration, or
yeah.
object storage to object storage data migration. And this is okay. I would like to know more about what is the data mover behind that you are using, if you are developing your own data mover from S3 to S3 or reusing S3 mirror or these kind of things. And the second question is, I have seen Azure files and I have seen volumes and file systems. Are you also doing data migration from block to object, block to file, file to object, object to file to block? Okay, could you elaborate a bit more?
Sure. So primarily, if you take a look at what are the different type of block, the storage types. So there's block storage, there is object storage. So all the major types of storage are supported by default. So the example that we gave was for the object storage with S3 and cloud buckets. But yes, in terms of migrating your different types of data, that is supported. Block storage is supported, and then object storage. All the common object storage types are supported.
But how do you move things from object storage to block storage? You create a folder and put all the objects as files in the folder, or how do you do that?
Yeah, so one of the slides that I showcased, and let me actually go back to that particular slide. So this is the data flow engine that you can probably take a look at. So over here, once we actually define what's our input path, right, from where we want to migrate our data. So first we'll go ahead and define that path. So the UI from wherever, like, the path from wherever we want to get or fetch our data. And then that data will get into these jobs where it will be stored internally for that moment, for that duration when we want to migrate it. And that logic of being able to either do a direct object-to-object storage migration, or from block storage to object storage, that's handled internally by the data flow engine. So that logic is defined internally itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the migration data mover is using a known technology behind, or
Yeah.
a new one?
No, it's known.
And which is the technology that you are using?
So I'm not exactly sure of what data mover technology is used internally within this, but I mean, it's nothing out of the box. It's pretty standard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice, thank you.
Thank you.
And it must be static stale data, right? Because if the data is in use, you can't just move it.
Yeah, makes sense.
There's always updates specifically on the block side, right?
Yeah. But what you can do is that you can set up cron jobs in order to, or you can basically set up that if you want to do weekly data migration. I completely understand that if it's live data, then it might be a bit difficult, but you can set up schedules for weekly data transfer as well. You can set up those schedules over here, like a scheduler that can help you do that.
How about like Secco from Scalely? What are the competitors that you're looking at? Because this is an open source project.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are a few competitors that are out there, and these are, because one of the things that the companies, like the major cloud providers themselves, will not provide you the solution. But what we are seeing is that, of course, they wouldn't also oppose this because it's a very, an ongoing project. But there are a couple of solutions from some of the other foundations within the Linux Foundation itself. And then there are some private companies that do provide these migration options. But over here, like with this open source project, there's no dedicated cloud offering. You have to set it up on your own. So we don't have a dedicated cloud offering as such. You have to set it up on your own infrastructure, and you'll have to manage, you'll basically have to self-host it.
How do you deploy Strato? It's a Kubernetes application, it's a SODA application, and where do you deploy it?
Okay, so the way to deploy it is basically the dashboard itself that you saw in the video, that's written in TypeScript. So there will be two different things that you have to migrate. So deploy. So the first one is the SODA dashboard itself, and then you have the SODA controller API, and that's the main brains behind. So you have to basically deploy both of them. So there are deployment scripts that you'll find in the multi-cloud repository, and you can use that to deploy your SODA font, like the Strato project locally if you're running it on-prem.
So if multi-cloud is so good, I mean, there are so many advantages. There's no vendor lock-in, you get the best of all clouds. Why doesn't everyone use it?
That's a good question. I mean, see, ultimately it will depend from company to company, right? Some companies are partnering exclusively with one cloud, and they are benefiting from the services that are provided. But sometimes there are a lot of things that goes into it, right? It's not just the cost. It's also from a governance perspective that which particular service is well suited for a particular use case. So if we just take an example of machine learning. Now, the cognitive services that are provided by AWS are probably the best one, even better than, let's say, GCP Cloud Vision or Azure Cloud, right? So it could depend from that which particular service from a particular cloud provider might suit best for a given use case. So it kind of depends from company to company, and trust me, a lot of companies are moving towards multi-cloud architectures. It's a growing field. So a lot of companies are currently adopting multi-cloud architecture, and it's not just limited to the data management. We also see multi-cloud, multi-cluster Kubernetes, right? From a perspective. So there are a lot of like Kubescape, a few of the open source projects that are using multi-cloud. I forgot the exact name for the Kubernetes side of things as well, but multi-cluster Kubernetes is also becoming very popular. So that kind of follows the same line in terms of like why companies are today choosing between multiple cloud vendors because of these reasons.
Is SODA
No, as I mentioned to one of the previous questions, that it does support all the major object storage types. So whether it's object storage, block storage, so it's supported. The example that I showcased.
I get that, but I mean, is SODA as a foundation limited to object, or will you expand into doing block devices like EBS?
Yeah, so actually the SODA Foundation doesn't just have the Strato project, that's just for the data mobility. There are a number of other projects in the entire SODA ecosystem that you can take a look at. Those are primarily focused on data security, cloud security, and there are a number of different projects within the SODA Foundation ecosystem as well, including ePBF. So there are integrations that are there with ePBF and CubeEdge. So you can just check out the SODA Foundation website to kind of explore. The focus for my presentation is just on the data mobility part. Yeah. So data protection, then rollbacks, and migration, data migration, and yeah. So all of those comes under the SODA Foundation. So a number of projects that take a look at that.
I noticed in the demo that there was like a manual download and upload of data when you were trying to.
Yeah.
So what if you're trying to move an extraordinarily large number of buckets, extraordinarily large number of data? Is there any way of like automating that process?
So as I mentioned that there is a scheduler, right? So with the help of the scheduler, you can schedule these jobs, right? So you can create jobs that can help you to fetch and migrate your data. So in case you're having, like, let's say, huge gigabytes of data, you can run scripts that can enable you to do that migration for you without you having to manually put in the effort. So you can schedule cron jobs to manage that. Any other questions?
Cool.
All right. Thank you.